Welcome back to episode 7 of Between the Lines. Adam Crooks alongside Nate Polite here in the OTN studios. Nate, tremendous week of racing, NASCAR, Indycar. We got Formula One coming up this week. It's all kicking off right now.
Yeah, we had a great week last week with St. Pete for IndyCar and the Truck Series, Coda for the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series and the NASCAR Cup Series, and now we get everybody going to Phoenix Raceway except for Formula One, like you said, back. They're in Australia this weekend.
We will touch on Formula One a little bit later. Let's start with the NASCAR Cup Series, though. Well, not the NASCAR Cup Series. Let's start with NASCAR. The Truck Series, of course, joining IndyCar in St. Pete. Lane Riggs gets the win, but great showings from Dario Franchitti. Good showing from James Hinchcliffe. Jimmy Hinch. Jimmy Hinch finished in the top 10. Dario Franchitti had some issues with running into the wall. I think he finished somewhere in the 20s. But tremendous race in St. Pete.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And one of the things that was talked about a lot of that race by Jamie Little and the rest of the Fox crew was track masters, guys like Hinch, Franchitti, versus truck masters, guys like race winner Lane Riggs, my pick to win from last week, Ben Rhodes, and plenty of other guys got out to the front of that Truck Series race, and they were the truck regulars that really kind of stole the show. Probably surprised a few people, but you also got to think these are big trucks. They slide around. They don't drive very good. Certainly don't drive as good as an IndyCar does around that place. The brakes aren't great. So it's a whole different animal for these guys.
And especially when you have a scenario like we did in practice one, you get about 10 or so minutes of green flag running, and then the rain comes, and it completely changes the game. But I thought for the first time being in a truck, James Hinchcliffe, Dario Franchitti, both qualified in the top 10. They were both in the top 10 for most of the day. Overall, pretty good showing from those guys.
Absolutely. And then Franchitti, you also got to consider he's not really done a race of that nature in a very long time as well.
Yeah. 12 years since Dario's really been in a car on a street circuit. Lane Riggs gets the win. Where are we with the Truck Series points at the moment? Now we're done with the first 3 races of the season. Truck Series goes to Vegas next, the first real actual race of the season.
I think it's Darlington next for the trucks. I think they skip over Vegas. They get 2 weeks off. It's the Truck Series is always super weird. They follow everything around for the first couple weeks, and then I think last year they had a whole month off in the season. But nonetheless, of course, Front Row Motorsports has taken the first 2 series regular wins. Chandler Smith at Daytona, and then Lane Riggs at St. Petersburg. You go to Darlington, it's kind of up in the air who it's going to be, and we'll have that preview as well once that race weekend comes around. Overall, I think right now, the title favorite's probably Lane Riggs. I think he's got the best truck and he's the best driver of those guys. But a guy that I'm going to be looking out for is the truck that won the title a season ago, the 11 truck. It's not Corey Hyman or Caden Honeycutt. He was really good. Carved his way through the field at a couple of occasions at St. Petersburg. So Caden Honeycutt's a guy that I have my eye on.
A lot of races to go in the Truck Series. I did have one question coming out of the Truck Series race. Nothing to do with the racing. Townsend Bell was on the call as an analyst with Jamie Little and Michael Waltrip. I was told that was the best Truck Series booth of the year. Maybe the best Truck Series booth of the last couple years because of Townsend Bell.
Townsend Bell was really, really good. It's interesting because he's an IndyCar guy.
Yeah.
Right? So he's coming to the Truck Series as an analyst and something that he's not super familiar with, but I thought he did a fantastic job, and the chemistry within the booth was great as well, I think.
We'll talk a little bit more about Townsend Bell in a couple segments. Let's go to the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, aka the Xfinity Series. SVG gets a dominant win in Coda. I mean, he took the field to school.
He did, and especially on that final restart, he had kind of shuffled back to, I think he restarted in 6th. He was clear in the lead. By the time he got out of turn 1, he was pretty much in the pit exit coming to turn 1 to the inside of Sam Mayer. Everyone overshoots it. Yeah, he took the field to school. He was the best driver on the racetrack. Could have had a duel with Connor Zilisch. Zilisch had some issues, so he wasn't really up and competitive in that race. SVG drove away from the entire field and proved to everyone why he's the guy that he is, and got another, I think it's now 10 in a row wins on road courses for Junior Motorsports, and it's a pretty dang impressive number.
Yes, it is. The O'Reilly Auto Parts Series now going to Phoenix next. Again, similar question as the Truck Series, Nate. You know, we get to our first real actual race of the year. Some guys are a little bit farther down in points than they'd like to be. Austin Hill, pretty far up in points, gets the second place finish in COTA. Didn't have a great finish in Atlanta, but of course won at Daytona. How does that set us up for the next 23 odd races?
Yeah, my thing with Austin Hill is kind of obviously his biggest calling card is super speedways, but COTA too. I mean, he's finished second place there 3 times. He's pretty dang good on the road courses. It's always, as far as his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series career is concerned, been the intermediates that he's not been nearly as good on those as he has on other tracks. He's still very good, but I think if I got to pick between the 2 RCR cars, I'm going to take Jesse Love over Austin Hill when it comes to those intermediate racetracks that make up most of the schedule. I still have my eye on Jesse Love as a potential back-to-back title candidate. Sheldon Creed finally got a win. We'll see if he can break the seal and start getting to victory lane a couple of times this season. Sam Mayer has always been pretty good as well, and you can't count out. I know Junior Motorsports is kind of weird this year with Quapple and Carruth both having kind of weird part-time schedules. Quapple already got one of his DGM races out of the way at COTA, finished pretty well, ran pretty well that entire day. Carruth not so lucky. He's got his first race out of the 88 this weekend at Phoenix, but he was 3rd in points going into COTA after those first 2 races and chaotic races in Daytona and Atlanta. So I think Carruth has himself set up pretty well, but I think he's got 10 races outside of the 88 car throughout this regular season, so he's going to have to make the most of those so he can get into the chase.
Who's a guy that we haven't seen succeed this year? Maybe a Justin Allgaier, a guy who really through the first 3 races of the year hasn't been great, but is really going to start to pick it up on mile and a half. So I mentioned Justin Allgaier. I think he's probably my guy right now. Justin Allgaier's been tremendous in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. Of course, the defending champion. Who's the dark horse heading into the rest of the regular season?
I would say a dark horse, and particularly for this track we have coming up this weekend, doesn't usually get a lot of talk, but Brandon Jones. He's been pretty good at Phoenix in his O'Reilly Auto Parts Series career. He's pretty good at intermediates. I'd say his best track on the schedule is Kansas, and he's won a couple of times there. We go to Kansas in about a month and a half in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, I believe. He's kind of like JGR's Justin Allgaier in a way. He's been in the O'Reilly Series pretty much his entire career, bounced around between RCR, went to Gibbs, then to JRM, now back at Gibbs. I think that he's going to have a chance to... I think this chase format benefits him because he wasn't always the best at winning races, but he can certainly get those results.
Yeah, Brandon Jones, a guy that's won 3 or 4 races the last couple of years apiece. Let's move on to the Cup Series. Big race this week in COTA, and it's Tyler Reddick that dominates again. He wins from pole. I think they said Chase Briscoe led the first 8 laps of the race, and then after that, it was all Reddick. First driver to ever win 3 in a row to open a season. We'll get to the 23-11 story in a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Reddick. Just how big of a year is this for Tyler Reddick? Anytime you can win 3 races in a row is awesome, but to me, the regular season starts this week. These first 3 races were great, but the regular season starts with Phoenix. It starts with the mile and a halves that we go to, and how good is Tyler Reddick going to be on those tracks? I think that's a question that he still has to answer, but so far, Nate, Tyler Reddick's been so impressive.
Yeah, it's so thrilling. We talked last week off the back of course, 2 wins it was great anyway, but his 2 super speedway wins, those are generally seem to hold a little bit of less weight when it comes to analyzing how they're going to translate to the rest of the season. He comes out, wins the pole for COTA. That's a great stop. Stage 1, he fell all the way back to 8th as Ryan Blaney gapped the field. And I was at least at home watching the race thinking, okay, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe Tyler Reddick wasn't really like that. Then he gets the lead in Stage 2, holds off Ryan Blaney, which is impressive. You saw Blaney's run in stage 1 was just so fast. Gets the lead again in stage 3, holds off Blaney again through the pit stops. Now, after the caution for Ross Chastain losing a tire, it's not Ryan Blaney he's got to hold off, it's Shane Van Gisbergen, and SVG could not get by him. Post-race, SVG called Reddick's drive immaculate. That's high praise from the multi-supercar champion and the guy who won 5 of the 6 road course races a season ago. As for future races, I'm not so confident in Reddick. At Phoenix, per se, it's never really been his best racetrack. But the 2 races after that, Las Vegas is probably his best of the mile-and-a-half ovals. And then Darlington, he's not won there yet in the Cup Series. But it's really only a matter of time. I think a lot of guys agree with that.
I think for me, outdueling SVG is extremely impressive, but we're also talking about a track where SVG hasn't had a lot of success in the Cup Series. He's won a couple Xfinity races, a couple O'Reilly Auto Parts Series races, but we've never really seen him succeed super well at COTA. It seems like the Cup Series regulars have, so to speak, have always had a little bit of an edge at COTA. It's when we get to Watkins Glen and Sonoma and San Jose. Sorry, not San Jose, San Diego.
Come on, Adam.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But it's when we get to those tracks and the Chicago Street Course, which of course we're not going to this year. Mm-hmm. That's where I think SVG is just a little bit better than these guys.
And that's kind of what has intrigued me a lot of, because you would assume that it's the Cup Series drivers having experience running at COTA that SVG doesn't have. So I was curious then last year why that didn't translate to Sonoma. Why that didn't translate to Watkins Glen, right? Because he mopped the floor with the field in both of those races as well. I mean, you remember a couple years ago he did not win Watkins Glen, lost to Chris Buescher outright, but was even fighting for the win there, very late in the race. So it's always been interesting why COTA's the one track where it hasn't quite clicked. I think it's very possible that because, and talked about this on the broadcast, COTA's really 2 different racetracks.
Yeah.
It's that very fast section through the S's and that tight technical stadium section. Whereas a lot of the other racetracks and road courses that NASCAR has gone to, they're either all fast like Watkins Glen, or they're all technical like a Sonoma, like Mexico City last year, the Chicago Street Course. I think San Diego is another one that's going to be really all technical. And when you only have to balance for one of those things, that's when SVG's skills kick in, because he can dial into just that one objective and he can run the gambit the entire race.
It certainly could be. As I said, the regular season, as I like to call it, starts this week at Phoenix, with the first 3 races of the year being, relatively lottery races. I mean, anyone can win those races. We've got some guys who are some places in the point standings where they really shouldn't be. Zane Smith was in the top 5 before COTA. I think he fell down to 12, somewhere between 12th and 16th. AJ Allmendinger, I think, is in the top 10 in points right now. SVG is in the top 10 in points right now.
Yeah, I think he's 5th.
There's the point standings heading into the beginning of NASCAR's regular season is all over the place, and particularly Kyle Larson is towards the back.
Yeah, Larson wasn't so lucky at Daytona, and, well, Atlanta, that was his fault in my humble opinion. Had a good race at COTA, didn't have a great race at COTA, but he had a good race at COTA, helped him kind of squeeze back into that. But Kyle Larson's going to be fine. He's going to get to these tracks where he can just rack up results. I mean, I mentioned Reddick's skills at Vegas and Phoenix, or Vegas and Darlington. I think Kyle Larson's better than Reddick at both Vegas and at Darlington. He's certainly better than Reddick at Phoenix as well. But we can't talk about the point standings without talking about the fact that Tyler Reddick has already built a 70-point gap. In 3 races, he's ahead 70 points. That's huge. You don't just lose that lead. Now, of course, the win streak will not last forever.
No.
I would not be surprised to see if there's a cold streak coming around. Tyler Reddick has been streaky in his career, of course. But it's going to take a pretty significant down streak, as well as some really good races from the guys even nearby him to go jump past that 45 anytime soon. He's in a great place to kind of play defense for the next 23 races and collect that 100-point bonus going into the chase.
Yes, he is. Let's talk about his team, though. 23-11. Two of the three legs of the team doing pretty well. Riley Herbst, of course, not spectacular to start the year. Not spectacular last year either, but 23-11, at least through the first three races. Again, we haven't seen him on mile and a halfs. We haven't seen him on short tracks, which make up the bulk of the schedule. They seem to have found an extra gear, though. They seem to be just a little bit better than they were last year. Do you think that's going to make a difference in the championship standings?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, like I said, Reddick already ahead by 70 points. Bubba Wallace is in second. He is the guy 70 points behind Reddick. I think he's 2 points ahead of third place, which is Chase Elliott. And it's... I don't really know where it came from, right? Because Gibbs has always been that number one Toyota team. I don't think 23-11's ever been bad. Of course, I mean, their worst season was 2021 when they were just getting started. But year two, they went out and swept the Kansas races with Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace. 2023, Tyler Reddick goes out and starts winning races again. Both drivers get wins last year in both drivers get wins in each of the last 2 years. Reddick got the wins in 24. Wallace got the win in 25. This year, I mean, they have completely ran the gambit. And Bubba Wallace has not gone to one of his better tracks yet. I mean, Daytona and Atlanta, yes, he's very good on the super speedways. But you mentioned it, those are kind of lottery races, and they're very easy for you to get caught up in someone else's mess.
Yeah.
Wallace did kind of experience that. Despite leading a whole lot of laps, he finished on the back end of the top 10 in each of those two races. Wallace, historically not good on road courses, came home in the top half of the field this week. I think he came home P12. So just super good stuff for Bubba Wallace. Riley Herbst is Riley Herbst.
He is.
He's Riley Herbst. He's got the Monster Energy sponsorship that can back a third car and
We'll
bring in the money.
We'll compare him to a guy in the IndyCar series who had a lap one incident a little later on.
Yeah, I don't think that's an unfair comparison. But as far as the 45 and the 23, I think those guys are both going to make the chase based off what we've seen. And I think the best is yet to come because they're both also very good on these intermediates. And I think that speed is here to stay.
They definitely could be. We did have a weird moment in the NASCAR,
really weird.
the NASCAR
really
Cup
weird.
Series race. Alex Bowman gets sick mid-race. Myatt Snyder, actually Marty Snyder's son, which I didn't know.
Yeah,
but
that was the first I heard of it, too.
That's the first I heard of it. But Myatt Snyder makes his Cup Series debut in the 48 for Hendrick. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better car to make a Cup Series debut in.
I think the only thing you could hope for is that you weren't coming into the race 4 laps down as Snyder was. But hey, always bring your helmet to the racetrack, kids, right? That's during the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, Parker Kligerman and Jamie McMurray were talking about that because Brad Perez made the start. And funny enough, guess who Myatt Snyder asked about the braking marker into turn 6?
Brad Perez.
Brad Perez. I saw that on Twitter. Perez posted the screenshot of the text and said, turns out Myatt Snyder was hopping in the race car because he was the only free driver at the racetrack.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even there to drive. He was there as a pit spotter for Jamie Little and the Fox Sports team on pit road. And they came to the end of the broadcast with the story, and Jamie Little's like, guys, I've got a really weird story developing here. And I'm like, what could possibly be going on? She's like, yeah, my pit spotter is getting in the 48 car. So, I mean, what a chance to make, what an impression to make as well.
Yeah.
You know, it never hurts to have some good karma with Mr. H.
They say availability is the best ability, and certainly that was true for Myatt Snyder. NASCAR goes to Phoenix this weekend for a doubleheader with IndyCar, and I think this is really going to be the first test of what we're going to see in 2026. I don't want to keep harping on it, but the first 3 races I don't feel like told us a whole lot about the 2026 field. I think the important questions in Phoenix, and maybe you have some others, are how good is SVG going to be on ovals this year? That's going to be an important question to answer. How good is 2311 on ovals this year? And we may not find out till Vegas or Darlington, but as we talked about in the preseason, the Chevy camp getting a semi-new car. How are William Byron and Kyle Larson going to adapt to that car?
Yeah, there's plenty of questions to be asked going into Phoenix. And another one that I have is, what is Team Penske's speed going to look like? You know, we mentioned last week talking about IndyCar that in both IndyCar and in the Cup Series, Penske's been down on speed. overall the last couple of seasons, and kind of lucked into a championship in 2024 with Joey Logano. And other than that, it's kind of been Ryan Blaney, and then Logano and Cindric running outside the top 10 for Team Penske. We'll see if they figure that out. Of course, Phoenix has been their best track in the next-gen era, but not usually in the spring, funny enough.
Let's move on to the NTT IndyCar Series, who made their season debut on the streets of St. Pete. Nate, lot to talk about in the first 50 laps of the race and practice and qualifying. Last 50 laps of the race, not particularly great. Hopefully we get a better showing in Phoenix. Let's start with practice and qualifying. The Penske cars having trouble again. That was kind of the story of qualifying. Joseph Newgarden towards the back. The Andretti cars also struggled a bit. Kyle Kirkwood and Will Power didn't make it out of the first groups of qualifying. Not great starts to the season for those guys. Alexander Rossi, of course, qualifying last in 25th. But Joseph Newgarden started, I think he started 20. He started in the 20s, 22nd or 24th.
Yeah, way back was Joseph Newgarden, and he ended up getting into the top 10.
He did
pretty quickly in the race, and kind of stalled out around that 8th, 9th place area. Qualifying was for everybody but Scotty Mack. Pretty much is what it was for Team Penske, and we'll see if they can fix that speed coming to the ovals. They were able to rebound nicely race pace wise, but it's not always going to be that easy for you to get through the field. There's some tracks that are really difficult to pass at, right? So they've got to figure out Saturday speed, but someone that did figure out Saturday speed is Dennis Hauger.
Dennis Hauger. What a first race for Dennis Hauger. That's actually the first time both Dale Coyne cars, I don't know if you saw this stat, made the final round of qualifying since 2021 in Detroit.
Wow.
Romain Grosjean, Dennis Hauger, of course, making the Fast Six, running for pole. Dennis Hauger qualified 4th behind Scott McLaughlin, Marcus Ericsson, and yes, Alex Palou. Romain Grosjean, I think, ended up qualifying 6th. But great showing for Dale Coyne in the opening race of the year. This is a team that we saw have speed with Rinus VeeKay last year, but to see it come out with Dennis Hauger and Romain Grosjean, really, really impressive.
Really impressive. And Hauger ended up kind of fading to the back end of the top 10. To be expected. He is still a rookie, still making his first start, right? But that's an impressive way to start your career in the IndyCar Series. And we mentioned last week in our preview, he's kind of vying for a potential spot at Chip Ganassi eventually, right? So that's a pretty good impression to make on old Chip.
Yes, it is. Let's go to the race. We'll go good, bad, ugly.
Yeah.
The good, Marcus Ericsson ran well. Kyle Kirkwood ran well. The Andretti cars overall running well. First 50 laps of the race, extremely competitive, back to front. Scott McLaughlin led most of the first portion of the race, followed closely by Ericsson and Palou. I thought it was going to set us up well for the finish, but overall, if we're talking about good, you got to talk about the debut of Dennis Hauger, the debut of Romain Grosjean back in the IndyCar Series, Joseph Newgarden working his way back into the top 10, Rinus VeeKay finishing in the top 10. A lot of positive stuff that some of the midfield guys can take into Phoenix next week.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned Kyle Kirkwood a little bit, but he's another one of those guys that started towards the rear of the field. I think he ended up getting as high as 2nd in the race. I can't recall right now if he finished there.
He finished 4th. He was passed by McLaughlin and I think Marcus Armstrong.
Yeah, and so, but still, a good job for him to cut through the field, after his breakout season a year ago. And yeah, there was a lot of good in this race. I think the ugly, if you want to call it that, was Alex Palou kind of did what he usually does and turned the race into a stinker.
Yes, he did. Alex Palou took the lead off of a caution from Scott Dixon. That caution, of course, coming at the exact right time for Alex Palou. Not that he wasn't going to have the lead anyway, but Alex Palou gets the lead and he pulls away from Marcus Ericsson, and Scott McLaughlin ends up winning by, I think, 13 seconds.
Unreal.
Ericsson knows Kirkwood and McLaughlin at one point had the gap down to like 6.5 seconds, and then Alex Palou pulls away. Let's talk about the bad, though. The bad was the debuts. David Malukas flat spotting the tire and then the tire coming apart. Will Power having brake issues. Not great debuts for guys that probably need to have good years.
Yeah, absolutely. The flat spot for Malukas was a problem, and it got really bad when the tire blew out on him. Will Power, what are you going to do? Mechanical failures happen. And then the pileup on the first lap and derailed Mick Schumacher's debut. Sometimes things just don't go your way. I mean, not everybody can be Alex Palou, who is lucky and good, right? Sometimes you're unlucky. And bad luck caught some of these guys out.
It certainly did. An interesting point that they made during the broadcast, Mick Schumacher getting out of the car after it was on top of Santino Ferrucci. I would have liked to see him try and stay in the car and continue. I know it's kind of a European thing. You hit the wall, you break the car. The Indy cars aren't quite as fragile as Formula One cars. There's a possibility that he could have gotten off Santino Ferrucci and continued. Little unfortunate that he was out so early in the race. But, I mean, it was all caused by, I don't want to call him the Corey Haim of IndyCar. I'm sorry, not Corey Haim. The Riley Herbst of IndyCar. But if there is a Riley Herbst of IndyCar, it is Stingray Robb.
Yeah, he's got a cool name, though. He's got a cool name. Everyone loves a guy named Stingray.
He does, but that was a very Stingray Robb moment.
Yeah.
Let's keep our predictions in the pocket for now. IndyCar going to Phoenix on Saturday to run the Good Ranchers 250. It'll be the IndyCar race at 3, followed by the O'Reilly Auto Parts race. The NASCAR Cup Series, of course, races on Sunday. Another season that starts up on Sunday is Formula One. And there's a lot to talk about going into the 2026 season. Brand new cars, a brand new team, and brand new technology. From Ferrari bringing the rear wing that flips. We're going to have to see how that plays. The rumor is Mercedes holding back a little bit in preseason testing. Let's start with the defending champions from a year ago. McLaren won the Constructors' Championship for the second year on the trot. Lando Norris wins the Drivers' Championship. Very high expectations this year for not only McLaren, not only Lando, but also Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, plenty of sky-high expectations. And Piastri is always a guy that I've circled as actually being more talented than Lando Norris when it comes down to it. Just a little more raw, a little more untapped potential in that 81. But it's been largely silent on the McLaren front throughout much of the offseason and into testing right now. I mean, Lando has the 6th best odds to win the championship, according to Vegas. And that's really what we have to go off of because there's not a lot of information getting out. Usually it's good information and bad information that gets out. So if nothing's getting out, it's a good thing because that means it's not bad. But it's also not that good of a thing because that means there's not really not much good to say. They could be kind of sandbagging a little in testing, perhaps. We have to wait and see in the race. But with whatever insider knowledge Vegas is getting, does not like McLaren this season. And coming off the back of that season, they kind of slowed up a little bit toward the end of last season as well, which allowed Max Verstappen to get back into the title fight. And, there was other miscues, the DQ in Las Vegas. But they were not as fast at the end of last season, and they haven't shown it a lot in testing. They're going to be an interesting camp to look at because it's entirely possible that they're the 4th team on the grid this year.
Let's go to the team that is the favorites right now, at least coming out of preseason testing. The reports, they're holding back a little bit. Mercedes comes in with George Russell, currently the favorite to win the World Drivers' Championship. Kimi Antonelli also up there, fresh off a tremendous rookie year at Mercedes. This is a team that's got very, very high expectations coming into this year. Some rumors about how much they actually showed with their engine coming out of preseason testing. The rumor is they have the best engine on the grid.
Yeah, and Andrea Stella from McLaren had high praise for them, and Ferrari as well, who we'll get to in a moment. But if it's true that Mercedes has the best car this year, that has to be the word go for George Russell, because again, this is going to be the second time I say this, that I think very soon Kimi Antonelli will be the best driver on that team, and George Russell needs to win a championship now the same way Daniel Ricciardo needed to win a championship before Max Verstappen grew up a little bit. That didn't happen. If George Russell wants to win a title, I think the clock is ticking. He doesn't have as much time as he thinks he may, because Kimi Antonelli is good.
Kimi Antonelli is tremendous. I guess the one question that I have about Mercedes this year is this a make it or break it year for George Russell? George Russell has been good at Mercedes. He's never been great at Mercedes. He's won races, he's led laps, he's finished on the podium, he's been in the top 5 in the championship, but we've never really seen George Russell dominate. Is this a make it or break it year for George Russell? Could we see Mercedes maybe go somewhere else if he's outperformed by Kimi Antonelli this year?
I think that if he's outperformed by Antonelli, probably the case. But I will say with George Russell, yeah, he's not had that kind of dominant performance, right? But he's never really had the dominant race car. There's been a couple of races where he's had the best car and he's gone out and won them, namely Singapore, right? He kind of rules the streets there. So I think that if he does truly have the fastest race car, that he can do it. But it's like I said, I think Kimi Antonelli, talent-wise, is better than him. It just needs to be tapped into. Kimi Antonelli, he's still a kid, just finished high school, right? So he's got a long ways to go as far as development behind the wheel and up here as well. And George Russell has gone through all of that when he was at Williams. He's now much more of a veteran driver. So I think if Mercedes truly does have the fastest car, Russell will contend for the championship. Win it, I'm not sure. I don't think it's make it or break it in the sense that he has to win the championship, but he absolutely has to outperform Kimi.
Let's go to the team that I think, regardless of what Vegas says, is probably the odds-on favorite to win at least the Drivers' Championship, maybe even the Constructors' Championship. It's Red Bull Racing. Max Verstappen, Isaac Hadjar in these cars. We've seen a rotating door of teammates for Max Verstappen. Isaac Hadjar, the latest of those. This Red Bull car, regardless of where it actually is on the standings, Max Verstappen's going to drag it to the front.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's done it before in his career and was winning 2 or 3 races when Red Bull was the 3rd or 4th team on the grid. Got to be the best team on the grid, and he won 19 of 22 races. So he's absolutely going to win multiple races, no doubt in my mind. There is part of me that thinks he could have been driving a 2020 Williams car and found that on the podium, because he's that good behind the wheel of a race car. I firmly believe Max Verstappen is the best driver in the world. As far as championship aspirations, we saw last year that he can be the best driver in the world in a solid car, and he will still lose to a good driver in a phenomenal car. We might see that this time around, but he is going to be in that title fight till late in the season, no matter what.
What do we have to see from Isaac Hadjar to keep him for the entire year in this Red Bull car? It's been a while since we've seen a Red Bull second driver complete an entire season.
Yeah, and to be blunt, it's don't suck. And that is make it out of Q1. That is finish in the points, which I think this Red Bull car is capable of. I know that the rumor is they're tailored perfectly to Max Verstappen's liking, and Max Verstappen is so good at driving that he can drive a car. He's faster in a car that's difficult to drive because, well, you get speed when the car is difficult to drive, right? I understand that that's the rumor, but the speed is in the car. These guys have got to be able to at least get points finishes out of it. And there's part of me that thinks that Red Bull is tired of just having this constant revolving door, because they're cycling through guys who were, at least at one time, very highly touted prospects. Someone has to give. I think Hadjar will be okay for the full season. Beyond this season, who knows?
The question that I've heard talked about coming into the season, not for Red Bull, but for Max Verstappen, is the rumor is that the drivers, including Max Verstappen, hate this car.
Yeah.
They hate the way they have to drive it. We've heard Max Verstappen, we've seen Max Verstappen talk about he doesn't want to do this forever. He doesn't want to be Fernando Alonso if he's not competing for the championship, if he's not winning races on the trot. What do you think the odds are that Max Verstappen is in this car for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then goes and does something else? I mean, we saw him pull up to the 24 hours of the Nürburgring and win it. It's not like he can't drive anything else. He's incredibly talented.
He is. He's a phenomenal talent. Like I said, I think he's the best race car driver in the world. I think that even like prime 2016 Hamilton against like 2022, 2023 Verstappen, and really what he is right now in equal equipment, I think that goes to Max. So he can come and hop in whatever he wants to, I think, and contend for a win. But the joy, of course, I'm not in his head. I don't know if he's just saying these things because he wants the car to be different. I don't know if he's actually that unhappy. I think that winning makes everything better, and I think that if he's able to go and maybe Red Bull does have the fastest car on the grid, and he's going to go win another 15 races this season, probably a lot easier to enjoy it when you're cruising out in the front. It's not exactly like he can go to a higher level of motorsport than Formula One for a better challenge, right? It would just be a different kind of challenge, and he's expressed interest in endurance racing and GT3 cars and things of that nature. I think that he still is going to stay in F1 for a number of years, at least until his 30s, right? Because again, he's still just this young kid in Formula One. I mean, he's young. He's extremely young. You think he's been racing in F1 for 10 years now, but he started when he was 16, 17 years old. So he's still got plenty of years ahead of him. I wouldn't think it's till the other side of 30 that he even really considers truthfully dropping out of F1, unless Red Bull is really just an anchor that drops to the field. But I think at that point, he'd be more liable to go jump ship to a different car. I mean, remember those Max to Mercedes rumors we had a couple of years ago?
Let's talk about a team with maybe the most interesting car on the grid, Ferrari, and their incredible rear wing. I actually had I had somebody explain it to me. The reason that it works, it creates lift when it rotates like that. It lifts the back of the car off the ground to make them go faster somehow. I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I'm a communications major. Anyway, Ferrari, a tremendous car, a great engine. They're powering a couple teams that we'll talk about later. But where does this Ferrari team stand right now? Where do they rank? What can we expect out of Charles Leclerc?
Yeah, and I think that is the question. I know you and I have had conversations away from the podcast about true talent rankings. I think Charles Leclerc is second true talent rankings in Formula One behind Verstappen. He's phenomenal. Ferrari's not had a very good car the last couple of years. I think that if what we saw in testing is true, where Ferrari was the fastest and Mercedes was not sandbagging, Red Bull wasn't sandbagging, McLaren wasn't sandbagging, Charles Leclerc is the championship favorite, right? And this is of course he's teammates with Lewis Hamilton, who I think will contend for wins this year. He's not the same Lewis Hamilton he once was. I think he's a much different guy. Hamilton has mentioned that he is really enjoying driving this Ferrari car, which is a far cry from what it was a season ago. I think that's a really good sign for all of Ferrari, right? For all of the Tifosi out there, for Charles Leclerc, for everyone there. It's been a long time since Ferrari was just competitive week over week, right? 2022, but
it has
actually championship contending material. That was back when Vettel was the leading man for Ferrari almost 10 years ago.
Another team that was competitive almost 10 years ago, Williams, and they've made some big improvements, huge strides. Carlos Sainz, Alex Albon in the Williams car this year. It was a Williams team that finished in the top 10 almost every race last year. They were consistently in Q3, fighting kind of on the brink of that top 5. Where do you see Williams falling in the running order this year?
I think it'll be pretty similar to last year. I think they're firmly top of the midfield, right? And it's kind of how this sport is, economically. I know with the cost cap and everything, but regardless, it was always going to be the big four kind of leading the way in this modern era of Formula One, right? Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren. Williams is going to be at the top of the midfield. I think it's not impossible that they win a race this season. We're kind of getting out of the teams that you think would go and win races, but we always seem to have, usually at least once a year, just a race ridden with chaos and somebody that you wouldn't think preseason wins the race goes and win the race. Maybe it's like 2020, we have like 4 of those races again, right? We had guys like Sergio Perez and Pierre Gasly winning races that year, of course. But yeah, Williams, so many improvements since. I mentioned earlier how slow they were in 2020. They were the laughingstock of the grid.
They were.
They've completely turned it around, and I think that pound for pound, they have probably a top 3 driver lineup. Just straight talent-wise, Sainz and Albon is a really, really good duo.
Another team that doesn't have a great driver lineup, but they certainly have an interesting one. Liam Lawson, Arvin Lindblad at Racing Bulls, one of the best-looking cars on the grid. A team that was kind of fringe top 10 last year, outperformed Yuki Tsunoda in a Red Bull car on a couple of occasions. I think they're probably going to be in about the same spot, kind of on that fringe top 10 line.
Yeah, I agree. This is, simply put, it's Red Bull's development team, right? And Red Bull development has gotten to work out, as we mentioned earlier. Arvid Lindblad, I would assume, is the next in line, should has Isaac Hadjar falter at some point this season, so he's got a lot to prove. I'm sure he's going to be driving maybe in over his head on a couple of occasions, right? Still a rookie. But yeah, I mean, Lawson and Lindblad, it's 2 guys just trying to build their career. That I think most of the grid knows Racing Bulls is not where you are going to win a championship at ever, right? I think that if there was ever a situation where Racing Bulls was faster than Red Bull, Max Verstappen is switching teams, and that's what the plan is going to be. So these guys know that the future is not at Racing Bulls. It's kind of an audition team, of course, for the second Red Bull seat, but even to impress other teams. We've seen guys go from Racing Bulls to other teams. Pierre Gasly, right, went from, it was then AlphaTauri, went to Alpine before Alpine really kind of fell off a cliff.
The team that has fallen off a cliff, speaking of falling off a cliff, Aston Martin came in with extremely high expectations with designer Adrian Newey, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll in that car, brand new deal to have a Honda engine. The interesting thing, Nate, is that this mirrors the last time we saw a Honda engine come into a new formula, and Fernando Alonso was in that car too. It was the McLaren, and Honda got it completely wrong last time, and there's a possibility they've gotten it completely wrong again.
Yeah, you mentioned bringing in Adrian Newey. That had me thinking Fernando Alonso was just going to win the championship because Adrian Newey builds rocket ships. Problem is, you can build a rocket ship, it's not going to go to the moon if it doesn't have a good engine, and it's gotten so bad, there's rumors that Aston Martin's going to start and park at Australia.
Joe Nemechek?
Which would be insane. And I know start and park is not an F1 term, it's a NASCAR term for underfunded teams. Those all-black race cars or all-white race cars, and they've only got the number on the door, F1 fans. If you've ever seen one of those, that's the conversations that Aston Martin's having right now, is they're going to start the race, they're going to run a couple of laps, and they're going to pull it into the garage and call it a day, hands clean, it's done, which is, obviously you never want to be there.
Yeah.
The fact that it's even a possibility, it shows what a massive blunder this offseason's been at Honda and at Aston Martin.
And it seems like this isn't even an Aston Martin thing. It seems like Honda's gotten the formula wrong for the second time. And they, I don't want to say that they very well could be out of the sport, but when you go from winning championships with Red Bull to not winning championships at all, with Aston Martin, quite frankly, maybe even not completing laps at Australia with Aston Martin, you got a lot of questions to answer. Couple teams on the back half of the field. Well, let's talk about a team that really picked it up at the end of last year with a rookie who impressed very well, could be in a Ferrari seat if Lewis Hamilton retires or leaves Ferrari. Ollie Behrman, P4 at Mexico last year in a Haas car that wasn't great at the start of the year, but certainly in the back half of the year was really, really good.
Yeah, and I think this season's all about Ollie Behrman for Haas. Esteban Ocon, he's a veteran of the sport, and he's definitely somebody that fans like to see succeed. Unless you're a fan of one of the guys that he's had run-ins with. But nonetheless, he's a veteran. He's not exactly the future of that team. If Haas has a future again, they're kind of one of those development teams, right? I know they are not. Haas in and of itself is not necessarily in Ferrari's shadow the same way V-Carb is with Red Bull, but they have been that pathway team that in what was once Alfa Romeo, now Audi, of course, have been those kind of pathway teams. But Ollie Behrman has a chance to impress, and that fourth in Mexico was big last season, and it goes to show that he's capable of doing that. And so why not shoot for more? Why not shoot for a podium? I think that, again, on his day, say for example that race that he was P4 at Mexico, say he gets a safety car at just the right time. Maybe there's an incident with the leaders, then he's right in a position to potentially win a race. That's one of those chaos guys that I could think of. If we have a chaos race, I think Behrman's pretty high on the list of guys that could steal the win.
He is, and there's a Haas team that has a Ferrari engine underneath it. And if the Ferrari engine is as good as people say, Haas could definitely be competing for top fives with Ollie Behrman and Esteban Ocon. Unfortunately, Esteban Ocon did get a 5-second time penalty in testing for Australia. So Esteban Ocon, automatic 5-second time penalty heading into Australia. Let's talk about the ugliest car on the grid.
Yeah.
Audi. Not a great looking car. They say they want to win championships in 5 years. Gabriel Bortoleto only had 5 points last year. So where are we with Audi, and can they really compete as much as they say they will?
Simply put, I don't think so. I mean, I look at Audi, and I think that they have probably the worst situation of any team on the grid. I think they're kind of starting from ground zero. Everybody loves Nico Hülkenberg. There is a reason why he didn't sit on the podium until last season, right, in his entire career, through a number of spots. Everybody loves him. He's a great guy, fan favorite for a reason. Not the best behind the wheel. Bortoleto didn't impress much either. This is not a great situation for for Audi. We'll get to Alpine in a second. They're also in a really bad situation.
Yes.
They're the only ones I think that can give Audi a run for their money, but I just don't think it's a very good driver lineup. I don't think it's going to be a very good car. I think this 5-year plan is a bunch of hopium for the fans. I don't have a lot of optimism for the Audi team.
Another team that we probably don't have a lot of optimism for based on 2025 Alpine. A team that consistently ran at the back all of last year, and honestly, I don't think it's going to change with the new regulations. I think they're kind of stuck at the back of the field again this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what it's been. They were another team they were kind of a top midfield team early 2020s, and have just kind of slowly trickled back down. There's not a lot to say about it. They scored 22 points all of last season. That's not the results that you are looking for, especially in a era of Formula One that sees a lot of parity, right? 22 points in the season. Toward the end of the turbo hybrid era, you might have said, that's not a bad year, right? Because there was sometimes teams would score less than 10 in a single season. Sometimes teams would score 0 in a single season, right? So 22 wasn't the end of the world. Right now, that's a horrible, horrible number.
Now we go to the team that is probably my favorite on the Formula One grid. Yes, I'm impartial. They've got a Mac car. We got Maction in Formula One. Cadillac with the Mario Andretti car. I mean, it's the Mario Andretti Cadillac 26 is the official name of the car, but Maction in Formula One, Nate. Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, you couldn't ask for a better first-year lineup for a team.
Yeah, really, it's two veterans. They're going to be able to tell a lot about the car because they both driven championship contending cars, constructors title winning cars. They've both driven, right? Perez at Red Bull, he was up there in the points in 2021 and 2022. Bottas was the second-hand man too. Lewis Hamilton at Mercedes for a number of years. They know what a good car is supposed to feel like. They know what it's supposed to be like at the front of the grid. They know how to win races. They know how to sit on the pole. There's a lot of information to be gained for Cadillac, and I think we mentioned it when they revealed their car. I think there's a non-zero chance, we didn't get any inklings of this in testing, but there's a non-zero chance that they could have a Braun GP type of season if they have the car, because they certainly have the drivers for it.
Yeah.
Right? Bottas and Perez were both very good as second drivers. Perez, obviously, for the back half with Red Bull, wasn't great. But his 2021, 2022 were very good. Bottas was very good his entire time as second fiddle to Hamilton. So it's entirely possible that this team surprises a lot of folks as they learn, the handle of the car, and it is likely that this is them getting the car settled in before Colton Herta makes the jump. He's, of course, going to be the reserve driver, have a lot of opportunities to try to build up some super license points so he can go off to race.
He's going to be in F2 this year. Of course, if you paid attention to F2 preseason testing, Colton Herta faster than his teammate in almost every single session. He's actually fourth in the final F2 preseason testing. That also starts this weekend in Australia. I'm going to be up late watching Colton Herta run F2 in Australia. I don't think my dad is. He's a bigger Colton Herta fan than I am. But what are the odds that we see Colton Herta in this car next year? And if we do you think it's Bottas or Perez that takes a step back?
I think the question is entirely dependent on the super license points. I think if he gets enough, he's in. If he doesn't get enough, he's not in. I think they want him in the car. I think that is a big reason why this team was started. I'm not saying that Cadillac F1 was entirely because of Colton Herta, but this started as an Andretti operation, right? Andretti Global wanted to get Colton Herta into Formula One. This F1 didn't want the Andretti name tied to it. There was that whole saga there. But it's certain that once those super license points are enough, Colton Herta is jumping into that car. If I had to guess, it would be Perez that goes. And I just think he's slightly worse than Bottas. And I think that he's just more likely to be the one that retires out of those two. I don't think we're going to talk about Zilich taking that car. I think we're a little bit away from that.
Yet.
I don't think that he's going to plan to go. We know Keelan Harvick won't be in that car. We
No,
talked about that last week. He's done with Europe. He's going straight to NASCAR. Is Harvick.
First time we've seen an 11th team on the Formula One grid since 2016. That year, the 11th team on the grid was Manor Marussia. Let's get into our predictions. Let's start with the F1 Season World Championship predictions, and then let's go to constructors before we get into our race predictions. I'll go first. I said it when we talked about him. I'm going Max Verstappen to win the World Championship.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a bad pick whatsoever because it's Max Verstappen. I think he's the default, right? So you kind of have to go with him. I mentioned him earlier on, and I kind of fought myself on this between a couple of guys over the course of the day, but I think I'm going to finally land on, yes, it's real. They've finally figured out how to build a fast race car. They have a very fast engine. Finally, Charles Leclerc brings home a championship for Ferrari.
The Texas of Formula One, we are back, is maybe what they'll say.
It's Ferrari's year. You know about that.
It is Ferrari's year. It is Ferrari's year. Let's talk a little bit about the Constructors' Championship. Not that it means a whole lot. I think if Mercedes really does have as good a car as they say they have, I think it's going to be very hard to beat Mercedes for the Constructors' title.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my guns on this. We've seen a couple of mismatches between driver and constructor title the past couple of years. Got back to some consistency with McLaren and Lando a season ago. It's going to be Charles Leclerc and Ferrari doubling up this season.
We should pick Cadillac to win the Constructors' Championship. You know what? No, I'm not gonna do it for the second week in a row.
Revisions.
No more AJ Allmendinger revisions.
I don't think
we'll call that
this week.
We'll call that the AJ Allmendinger clause. Let's go to our race predictions. The first race of the weekend is Indycar at Phoenix, the Good Ranchers 250. It's a short track. I mean, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
I'll let you start this week.
It's a short track. It's Team Penske. I'm going little Dave. David Malukas was the fastest in preseason testing at Phoenix, and I think he's got it in him to win his first IndyCar Series race. We've seen how good he is on short tracks. He led a significant portion of the Milwaukee race last year before Alex Palou passed him, and eventually Christian Rasmussen passes Alex Palou. Going David Malukas.
Yeah, I'm thinking a similar vein because it's Team Penske on a short oval, but I'm going to take the guy that's been the guy on short ovals, and as long as he doesn't flip while dominating the race, I think he's going to have a pretty good shot. Give me Joseph Newgarden.
That's a good pick. To the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, William Byron, of course, running this race with Hendrick, and I think we're going to end up having the same pick here, Nate. I'm going William Byron.
Yeah, I'm going William Byron too. It's tough when you have a Cup Series superstar come down into the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. You know, we saw that a lot in the 2010s. They pulled back on allowing Cup drivers to race. They've kind of rolled back into allowing Cup drivers to race. I think it's the right call for it to help develop the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series drivers, and we can have a much more longer-winded debate about that in a show that isn't so jam-packed as this one, because my goodness, we had a lot to talk about today. But yeah, I'm going to take William Byron as well.
Formula One in Australia, that race, of course, happening overnight. I think the green flag flies at probably, I think it's usually 2 a.m. is about when the green flag flies in Australia.
11 this year.
Oh, it's 11 p.m.?
I was surprised by that too, because it's been 11 for me on the West Coast for a very long time. I was like, wow, I'll take it.
It's usually 11. It's usually 2 a.m. on the East Coast. If it is 11 p.m., I will tune in to the entire race. F1 in Australia, I mean, I said he was going to win the World Drivers' Championship. I think he starts the season out with a bang. Max Verstappen is going to win in Australia.
And this is a win that I wrote it on the sheet, also revised it. I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc, same as you. My champion is going to be winning race 1.
That's how you want to start out the World Drivers' Championship, is winning race number 1. Race number 1 of the NASCAR Cup Series season is Phoenix this week, if you don't count the first 3 races of the year, which I don't. I think it's going to be a doubleheader for Penske. They've been tremendous at Phoenix the last couple of years. Joey Logano's won a couple races there, but I'm going with a different Penske driver, not Austin Cindric, because not a huge Austin Cindric fan. Going Ryan Blaney. I think Ryan Blaney gets the win at Phoenix.
And I'm going to go with a guy who I actually picked to win this race in the fall last year to win the championship. Team Penske has been very good at Phoenix, particularly in the fall race. The spring speed hasn't been there really outside of the 12 car for much of this next-gen era. But a guy who does have a spring race win at Phoenix, that's where he won his first career race. I'm going to take Chase Briscoe.
Well, that concludes our picks for the week. That concludes our show for the week. For Nate Polite, I'm Adam Crooks. You've been watching Between the Lines. Have a good week.